Hi, everyone. Welcome to our Unit Masters Cohort 7. And we are in week 2 now of our 6 weeks program. Last week, we spoke about decentralization and the Internet of Value and how Web 2 emerged to become Web 3. And this week, we're looking from a bird's perspective onto the blockchain ecosystem. And today, we're having a look, for example, at the Southeast Asian ecosystem of what's happening in Web3. And for that, we invited Jun. And Jun is working at Appworks. Appworks is in Taipei, and it's an accelerator in Greater Southeast Asia. Jun was born and raised in America, and he brings an international experience. He's worked and lived in 7 countries outside of US and Taiwan, while traveling upwards to 50 for leisure and also for some writing works. And he has a bachelor's in finance from New York University Stern School of Business. Before joining Appworks, Jun has worked for Focus Reports, where he conducted sector-based market research, analysis, and interviewed with several high-level government leaders and industry executives across the globe. And today, Jun will share with us what's hot in the Web3 crypto ecosystem in Southeast Asia, and also linking to the bigger trends we've been seeing for the past few weeks. Very happy to have you with us, Jun, and the stage is all yours. Thank you for being part of Unit Masters.
All right, thank you so much, Yip, for that lovely introduction. And it's a pleasure to meet everyone here today. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, in whatever time zone you might be in. I'm currently based here in Taipei, Taiwan, where it's 5 p.m. So good evening on my end. All right, so I don't think we have too much time today, so I'll probably just go ahead and get started and share my screen. I'll be sharing with you all today a little bit about what's been going on in the what we call Greater Southeast Asia's crypto landscape, and I'll define what exactly Greater Southeast Asia means shortly. As Yip kindly gave an introduction of my background, I'll just skip that part for now. But what I would like to do first is to give a little bit more context on who and what Appworks is, so you guys have an idea of where these insights are coming from and what sort of perspective we're looking at the landscape from. So Appworks, we are many things. If anything, we are a giant ecosystem now that has many, many pillars. So the first pillar is actually our startup accelerator, which started in 2010. It's essentially a 6-month equity-free program that happens twice a year, specifically targeted at startup founders. And so we've graduated 23 batches now, and that comprises of around 414 startups and 1,402 founders all across both Greater Southeast Asia and increasingly just all around the world, since we've been focusing a lot, very heavily on Web3 and crypto. And essentially, this is a free program where founders can work in an environment with like-minded peers and learn from both mentors as well as peers who have been in the same shoes as them to really share best practices and playbooks. So in parallel, we also have our VC funds. So we raised our first institutional funding back in 2012. And since then, we raised 2 additional funds. So we've been investing out of our third fund, which is $150 million. And in total, we manage around $212 million. We can usually invest anywhere from $200K to upwards of $15 million. And while we are stage and sector agnostic, we do have 3 general themes or paradigm shifts, as we like to call them, that we invest in. That is AI/IoT, Internet of Things, that's blockchain, which encompasses DeFi as well as NFTs, and Southeast Asia, which is more of a geographic focus. You can think of it as ABS for short, as we like to call it. And we're capable of doing equity as well as token investments. Token investments is, of course, really only applicable to crypto-based startups. Is increasingly a very popular form of fundraising. And right now we have over 70 portfolios to date. A good chunk, and increasingly bigger chunk, is dedicated to Web3. And we also run our own developer school. So back in 2016, we noticed that there was a big gap in the developer pool or engineering talents who wanted to go into the startup world. So we started our own school to train people who were looking to get active in the space and develop the necessary skill sets to become a software engineer. So we have multiple courses, including smart contracts, iOS, Android, front-end, backend, and data science. Over 400 graduates across 16 batches, and over 95 placement rate in employers, which include both Web2 and Web3 companies. Lastly, this is a relatively new thing. This is what we call a Beacon Funds program. So in addition to investing in startups, we actually also do fund-of-fund investments, which basically means that we invest in other funds as a way to source deal flow for us. And we usually can put in anywhere from 100K to upwards of 1.5 mil into these types of investments. And we have now over 20 beacon funds, as we call them. So just give you a snapshot of our Web3 activity, we've been focusing on the space since 2018 and been very, very active, probably have roughly 20 portfolios in the space now. You can get an idea of the type of companies that we've been investing in, everything from like an L1 protocol, like Flow, if you guys have heard of that before, very entertainment focused. The same team behind Dapper Labs, which created CryptoKitties as well as NBA Top Shot. We've done something like a crypto exchange like Kraken, institutional staking provider like Figment, and all the way down to like a play-to-earn project, GameFi project called Splinterlands, which is currently the top-rated, #1 most active game according to DappRadar. And to give you a sense of the type of funds that we've been investing in, there's just 3 here. One is Pantera, pretty well known, but also Blockchain Founders Fund and Play Future Fund. But that is Appworks in a nutshell. So we very much started as a Web2 type of firm, really helping people to take advantage of the paradigm shift of mobile. But in the last 4 years, we also narrowed our focus down to the next paradigm shift, looking at the next 10 years, which is very much heavily focused on Web3 and crypto. So a lot of our perspectives come from that angle. I wouldn't necessarily consider ourselves crypto first, but certainly we are crypto enabled. Had been trying to encourage founders to explore and experiment in this space. All right, so you heard of this term, Greater Southeast Asia, which may be a little bit strange to you. I'm sure many of you have heard of Southeast Asia before. Very, very popular backpacking destination. Generally, it consists of 6 primary markets. Of course, there's actually 10 included in ASEAN, but for the purposes of our analysis and focus, there's really only 6 primary markets of Southeast Asia. But we also tacked on both Taiwan and Hong Kong there, hence Greater Southeast Asia. And the reason for that is we think that Taiwan's future is better placed when you kind of distance itself away from the impetus of Greater China, where it's been very undervalued, and put it in the context as this incredibly fast and large growing region called Southeast Asia. So why the heck should you care about Greater Southeast Asia? Here are a couple fast facts. So actually, if you look at the combined nominal GDP of this entire region, it's around $3.7 trillion, which would actually make it the world's 5th largest economy, as a population of over 675 million, of which Indonesia is actually the world's 4th largest at 265 million. I remember when I first started looking at this region, I found that Indonesia was the 4th largest country in the world. I was actually quite surprised. Internet penetration has been growing very, very quickly. Now it's around 75%. That's up from about 50% when I first started looking at this region. And then there's a $200 billion internet economy set to double by 2025. So massive, massive potential when suddenly you have a huge population, a huge and young population that suddenly has access to technology. And you might hear people say or compare Southeast Asia to what China was around 10 years ago. I would say that analogy, I think, still holds, but there's certainly going to be a leapfrog effect. And what leapfrog essentially means is, for example, in China, they grew up with desktop computers, but here in Indonesia and the rest of Southeast Asia, a lot of citizens, their first point of access to the internet is actually through the mobile phone. And it's a similar leapfrogging effect that we're actually now seeing in the crypto and Web3 world as well. So just to give you a sense of evolution as an ecosystem, using unicorns as kind of a proxy of the growth and acceleration of the digital economy here, you can see that in 2017, which is actually when I started looking at this part of the world, there are around 9 unicorns. And then fast forward another 3 years to 2020, that count effectively doubled to 21. And then the most amazing thing is in the last year alone, 2021, the count doubled again to around 43. So the region has been growing incredibly fast. And the interesting thing is, of those unicorns that minted in 2021, 3 of them are actually crypto related. We had Matrix Report based out of Singapore, Sky Mavis, aka the developer behind Xfinity, based out of Vietnam, and also Big Cub based out of Thailand. And so if you look at the average time to become a unicorn of Web2 startups, it was actually around 6.5 years doing analysis on all these 43 unicorns. But if you look at the average time it took for Web3 startups to reach unicorn status, it was actually half of that, around 3.5 years. And that really helps illustrate the paradigm shifting potential of Web3 and cryptocurrencies. And we'll talk a little bit more about that later. So crypto in general, I mean, I don't know how many of you follow Chris Dixon, but he's been a luminary voice in this space. He's a partner over at A16Z Crypto. Crypto is effectively transitioning the internet from a platform-owned economy to a user-owned economy, most fundamentally through the use of cryptocurrencies and tokens. And that has generally been the way people have seen Web3. So in Web 1, it was very much a read-only type of experience. There were basically static web pages and people would go on just to consume content. In Web 2, you had the rise of platforms and people would both become a content creator as well as a consumer. But generally speaking, you didn't know any of it, and you were essentially building your businesses on top of rented land, as some would put it in terms of an analogy. But Web3, the most fundamental shift is now sort of this collective engagement of all your users through the use of tokens, which help properly incentivize your users to stay with the platform, to take part in its upside, and to grow with the ecosystem. And so that is the most fundamental shift. You hear a lot of keywords like decentralization, openness, transparency, immutability, et cetera, et cetera. Those are all a part of the same ethos. And we see that trend finally starting to take off here in greater Southeast Asia. So this is a map, an ecosystem map that we compiled last month. So historically, whenever I was switching back from Web3 to Southeast Asia, it kind of felt like I was going back in a time machine. But 2021 was a pivotal year for not just Southeast Asia and Web3, but also just crypto in general. It is when crypto had really become mainstream and got into the hands of everyday users, and the number of users accelerated very, very quickly over this past year, and adoption was greatly enhanced, and Southeast Asia, greater Southeast Asia also experienced that. So you can see the snapshot of the landscape here. Many of these projects were actually founded in the last 3 years alone. And we figured we actually looked at every single country in greater Southeast Asia and basically profiled the top 20 rising projects in this region that we wanted to feature, and just give people a sense of what exactly is going on in this part of the world when it came to Web3. And so in the following slides, I'll be taking a more individual snapshot of each of the 6 main markets, which excludes Malaysia, in this part of the world, just to give you a sense of what each country and market strengths are and what founders are working on. So let's first start off with Indonesia. So the overall headline, the very interesting thing here is that we see crypto investment outstripping public equities here. So as mentioned before, Indonesia actually has the 4th largest population and the largest in greater Southeast Asia, which really positions itself as a huge consumer market potential waiting to be untapped. And the most fascinating thing is actually there's 6.5 million people trading crypto right now compared to 2.2 million trading public equities. That's almost 3 times the amount of people that are actually trading cryptocurrencies and public equities, which is really a fantastic trend if you think about it. In 2021 alone, Indonesia generated around $25 billion in crypto transaction, and that's compared to 4.4 billion in 2020, which is almost a 500% year-over-year jump. So you'll see that some of the focus areas are going to be exchanges, wallets, asset management tools, as well as DeFi applications. Basically anything to help people on-ramp into the crypto world. As mentioned, there's a massive, massive consumer base there. So a lot of projects will be related to asset management and DeFi and exchanges as well. So moving on to Philippines, you guys may have heard of a company called Guild Games. They are effectively the one who pioneered this concept of play-to-earn gaming guild. And the reason they were able to do that is because Axie Infinity, which hopefully most of you have heard of, 40% of the users are actually from the Philippines. And what Yield Guild Games did is essentially the founder, Gabby Dizon, he essentially purchased a few NFT assets, a few Axies that they own, and ended up renting them out to other Filipinos who were struggling to make ends meet during the pandemic. And the beauty of play to earn is that suddenly when you're actually playing a game, you're also earning money. And so many of these underprivileged individuals didn't have the initial capital to buy Axie assets. So they effectively rented them from guilds like YGG. And now you're seeing tons and tons of guilds popping up all over the region. But YGG has been the one to front run that entire trend. And the beauty of this is that suddenly, crypto used to be very inaccessible to the average layman, right? Try explaining crypto to, your parents or your grandma or grandpa. It'd be very, very hard. But actually, Filipinos, many of them which have very, very little digital literacy, were now onboarded into the Web3 world because they found that it had some very real world applications. So many of them are actually relying on play to earn games just to meet their everyday needs, which is very, very interesting. It could be basically the next form of the gig economy, but in Web3 world. So Singapore, for those who don't know, is a very, very developed country in the middle of Southeast Asia, and they very much served as the region's management hub, mainly given its westernized culture and very business-friendly and forward-thinking government. So the country currently serves as a regional HQ for many, many prominent Web3 companies, including Matrixport, which is one of the unicorns I mentioned before, Vault, Engine, Economy, and Zilliqa, some of the other big names in that space. And then the country's regulator, actually called the Monetary Authority of Singapore, has been leading the charge in terms of policy development. So regulations and crypto kind of go at head to head with each other, but generally speaking, crypto founders like to have some definition. And so the MAS has been actually leading the charge on that, had to be one of the first to release some frameworks for ICOs and overall regulations for crypto exchanges. And given its position as a management hub, you're going to see a lot of talent based out of Singapore, a lot of them kind of leading the charge in terms of innovating in terms of the infrastructure layer. So L1, L2 development, things like asset securitization, and of course, license compliance, and also a lot of international exchanges, such as Binance will also be based in Singapore as well. So Taiwan, so our home of Taiwan. Taiwan is, traditionally Taiwan has had a tough time keeping up with paradigm shifts. So Taiwan is generally known to be a hardware manufacturing hub, and they were quite slow in adapting to no paradigm shift. So when mobile came to be back in the early 2010s, they were very, very slow to adapt. But the beauty of Web3 is that it effectively reset the playing field, and many Taiwanese founders have actually been on the forefront of the Web3 and decentralization movement. So for example, there is a project called Cream Finance based out of Taiwan, started by a Taiwanese founder, that is now currently one of the top 10 DeFi lending protocols in terms of total value locked. And there's another project called Blockto, which is one of our own portfolio companies. So they were one of the various earliest wallets to support the trading of the Flow token. And now they're also rolling out support to a whole bunch of different protocols, including Ethereum, Binance Smart Chain, Solana, Avalanche, etc. The company is also most notably recently invested in by Mark Cuban. But beyond that, we are very bullish on Taiwan's role in the Web3 movement. We think they have a very, very strong technical base and a massive, massive digital gaming and entertainment market. But the engineers are going to be, it's a developer's world right now in the Web3 world. So a lot of Taiwanese founders are well equipped to start playing in the space and develop interesting projects. Okay, Thailand. So Thailand traditionally has been a very sleepy ecosystem, if you will. In the Web2 world, Thailand has struggled historically to generate any sort of unicorns, but now with the advent of Web3, suddenly in 2021, Thailand actually was able to pop out 3 unicorns, one of which was a crypto unicorn named BitCub, which is crypto asset exchange. And so now we're actually seeing many promising projects coming out of Thailand, including a few like Band Protocol, which is also already trading. They're essentially doing a cross-chain data oracle. There's also GuildFi, which is providing tools for other guilds, gaming guilds, which we talked about before, and Finance Lab, which is a DeFi protocol providing a bunch of different financial products for people to trade and make money. And then the countries historically has actually demonstrated a very rich fashion design industry. And so we think Thailand will also be a top contender for producing many top quality NFT artists. I'm sure many of you here have actually dabbled a little bit in NFTs and perhaps purchased your very first JPEG off of OpenSea. We're starting to see a lot of artists also coming out of Thailand now, which is very exciting. All right, last but not least, my personal favorite is Vietnam. So Vietnam is a very interesting one because they're home to Axie Infinity, which effectively became super mainstream earlier in 2021. They are the one that effectively revolutionized the gaming world, this concept of play to earn, and they became one of the fastest startups to achieve unicorn status in greater Southeast Asia. They are also A16Z's very first investment in this part of the world. And again, I think there's really highlights that the paradigm shifting potential of cryptocurrencies and Web3. And so because of that, there's been a huge explosion of GameFi projects coming out of Vietnam, looking to follow in Axie's footsteps. Some of them you may or may not have heard of include Phaeton Arena, Etheria, Pegasus, and Farland. And this actually is representative of Vietnam's existing capabilities. It's a very strong technical hub. So Vietnam has demonstrated historical competencies in semi-casual and casual gaming. Perhaps many of you have played a game called Flappy Bird before. The developer was actually Vietnamese, was based out of Vietnam, and he wasn't alone. There's been many gaming studios, niche and boutique gaming studios based out of Vietnam. They're actually now getting into the play to earn and crypto game, and so we're going to expect a lot more GameFi projects coming out of Vietnam. Of course, some of them will probably start iterating on the model and start toying with new types of applications like learn to earn, for example, like move to earn, et cetera. But overall, I think Vietnam very bullish. They have very fundamentals. For example, they ranked #1 in crypto ownership, #2 in DeFi adoption, right after the US, and #3 in terms of MetaMask users, and that's after both the US and the Philippines. And this data is extracted from Chainalysis and MetaMask themselves. All right, so that's kind of a snapshot of what's going on in some of the major markets across greater Southeast Asia. And if we were trying to pinpoint a little bit about where this ecosystem is going, we can kind of take a look at how we got to the point where we are today. So this graph was actually compiled by A16Z. It's as of 2019, so a little bit out of date, but you can kind of get a sense of where the ecosystem has come. We have the first wave that started in 2010, shortly after the release of Bitcoin. The second wave with the introduction of Ethereum that took place from 2012 to 2016. And at that point, Bitcoin is still hovering far below where it is at today. So it's in the third wave in which people really generally started hearing about what the heck Bitcoin is and cryptocurrencies are. And that's where a lot of the existing big name giants in the space and established protocols, that's when they actually first started. Even OpenSea was started around this time in 2018. And Southeast Asia is no different. So the 3 crypto unicorns that we saw were actually started around this time as well. And you can see at that point, I don't know if you guys remember back in 2017, 2018, we got super excited when Bitcoin became 20,000. Well, very shortly after it crashed. But the great thing is that developer activity still maintained pretty consistent, even though social media activity, the media generally stopped covering it because of the crash and everyone thought it was a scam. But the most important thing is actually developer activity maintained. So that was when Bitcoin hit 20,000. In the last 2 to 3 years, from the fourth wave, 2019 to 2021, Bitcoin hit a high of $6 $69,000. So you can kind of extrapolate from here to see how much activity has been in this space. I would venture off to say if you update this graph, it will be 2 to 3 times higher. And of course, right now we're in a bit of a winter. Who knows how long it'll last. But for us, we're very, very excited for the winter because that's when a lot of work can start getting done under the hood. A lot of hype will die down. So we do expect a lot of people to stop talking about this. But developers, the ones who are true to the core ethos and were near and dear to the technological movement here, they're the ones that are going to be playing the space. They're the ones that are going to be developing the next unicorn projects of tomorrow. And that's what we'll be paying a lot of attention to. So super exciting times ahead. Don't be scared from the current prices. Actually, when they're low, that's when you should be looking deeper in the space. That's where you're going to find a lot of cool and interesting projects. That's when you're going to find the evangelists and the believers. And those are the people you want to try to stick to. So all in all, would encourage everyone to continue on with your crypto journey and keep going deeper, keep going down that rabbit hole. So we will, I think we're more or less up on time here. Happy to open up the floor up to Q&A now for those of you who have any questions.
Thanks so much, Jun, for this very comprehensive market overview. We had a few questions from the audience. One is like, what do you think about the Indian market and how come Japan and probably Korea are not covered in the report?
Yeah, so that's not to say that we're not bullish on other markets or countries in the Asia region like Japan or India. It's just more about our own capabilities, our own investment thesis, and also just our connections in the space. So for every VC, you have to find your core competency. For us, we don't have very, very strong allies or strong insights into the Indian or Japanese market, for that example. But for Southeast Asia, it's something that we've been looking at for the past 10 years. So that's where we have deeper insights. But and generally speaking, India has also been doing very well. Been coming across a few projects based out in India that have gotten quite a bit of attention. Japan, I actually haven't heard too much out of Japan. They've been a little bit quiet. But again, I haven't been as deeply plugged into the ecosystem as I have been over in Southeast Asia.
So now you already spoke about how to look at things as a VC, and do you want to share a little bit about differences when you look at a crypto project against a Web2 project, for example? What are completely different ways of evaluating things?
Actually, in many ways, yes, there are additional considerations that you need to make and different points of reference that you need to consider. But actually, at the end of the day, for us at Appworks, we've always been very, very founder driven, and so that part is one part that stays consistent. And that part is that determine the lion's share of our yay or nay decision. So at the end of the day, we are still going to be assessing the founder's commitment, his overall thoughts on the space, whether or not he's actually a true believer, whether or not he's a strong level of strategic thinking. All those still are of utmost importance. Where things might diverge a little bit is that, with the introduction of tokens, as mentioned before, many projects are using tokens as a way to fundraise now. But the thing is that tokens are actually only tied to the project. So in many ways, investing in tokens is a bet on the project itself. It's a form of project financing, right? So it's very, very hard to pivot away from a particular token project. And that in of itself is a little bit risky. Whereas if you're investing in equity, whatever the founder does, you still get a degree of ownership. So if so for example, if you invest in equity and one product doesn't work out, he could just develop the product and the company itself still captures any upside or value that it captures. But for tokens, if a founder gets bored of a particular project and he stops working on it, then our investment is at risk, right? And if he starts working on another project, it'll probably have another token. And in that sense, we will have no ability to really capture any of that value. And so that's why actually evaluating founders becomes even more important in the Web3 space, especially since many of these projects are pre-launch. And so we need to really understand whether or not this founder is committed to whatever they're doing, and whether or not they're just doing this for short-term gains, or whether or not they're just a plain arbitrager, whether or not they'll be able to ride out a winter or bear market. These are things that we have to stress test even more in the Web3 world.
How does one stress test these?
Yeah, it's funny. Any founders that pass through our investment committee, so when they come pitch to us, it's almost like a psychometric evaluation. So we go pretty deep into their values. We go pretty deep into their historical achievements. We go deep into their failures. We go deep into their troughs. Actually, the best way to assess a founder's commitment is to look at times in their past in which they failed, times in the past when things didn't work out, times in the past where bets didn't go as planned, and to see how they reacted, to see how they dealt with the situation, to see how they rallied the troops. And those serve as very, very valuable data points that we can then use to extrapolate what it's going to be like in moving forward. That's
very comforting to hear that in some environments people do look at the human capacities of running a sustainable project. So we have here questions also regarding to founders, and in particular to women, female founders. Are there many women, or what's the percentage maybe of women who participate in the ecosystem? And maybe if you can share some more insights on what are trends actually.
Yeah, I mean, female engagement and involvement has certainly been a metric that we've been tracking. Generally speaking, in our entire community, I would say in terms of the numbers of founders that participate in Appworks and are part of the community, you probably have around 10 to 15% female founders actually, which is pretty decent. I think the industry average is something very paltry at like maybe 5% in terms of the number of female CEOs, for example, in Fortune 500 companies. So slightly higher than the average, which is at least some opportunity for achievement, but certainly we can do more. When it comes to crypto in general, I think, I mean, I don't have any data to support this, but I do feel that there's a reason why. I don't think it's any coincidence that the rise in crypto kind of coincided with a lot of socially charged issues such as Me Too, such as Black Lives Movement, because in many ways those movements started because centralized powers oppressing underserved minorities and genders. And so crypto is kind of seen as a way to topple the regime. And the beauty of crypto is that everyone can get involved as long as you are passionate about the movement. Of course, you learn fast and move fast. And so I feel like I actually have been coming across more and more female founders getting more involved in the space, but certainly not as much as I would like, but it's still a work in progress. I'm sure, Yip, you can probably speak to this more than I can.
Yeah, we're running a lot of female empowered initiatives, even in Unit Masters, as you can see in our audience, trying to get a 50% ratio with the speakers, with the participants, so that, you know, we don't have this debate about do we need more women or not. We just have more women. So then, you know, you change the world by example, I would say. And we have also a question here, more a technical question, Jun. How would you explain in your words the difference between a coin and a token?
In coin, I think those differences are very nuanced. I would say in many cases that they're quite interchangeable, at least from the work that we do. But certainly if you were asked from more technical folks, they would probably give you more nuanced definitions. But for us, for all intents and purposes, we consider them to be the same thing.
Okay, and then there was a question about NFTs, because in the Western markets in Europe, NFTs are now like everywhere. And people were wondering, how is it in Asia? And also personally, what do you see as the evolution of NFTs in Web3?
Oh yeah, we're super bullish on NFTs, actually so much so that we kind of dedicated an entirely separate category to NFTs aside from blockchain. So the way we see NFTs is kind of a similar way to, so basically NFTs are to blockchain what e-commerce is to the internet. It's one specific application of NFT, one specific application of blockchain. And personally, I think I'm much more bullish on NFTs than DeFi. I think DeFi is still very much out of reach from the layman individuals, whereas NFTs is something everyone can understand. And if you really look back far enough, right, at the end of the day, people actually don't want to accumulate money. Money is just a means to an end. What people really want are things, right? And things are, why exactly do people want things? It's driven by the very, very same principles of human psychology. We want things as a way to satisfy security, as a way to satisfy our most basic primal needs, right? And that doesn't change in Web3. So what NFTs do is essentially just create another class of things that you can now own, which is a piece of the internet. Right. So previously, without the underlying technology behind NFTs, it'd be impossible to quote unquote own anything on the internet. Right. The biggest argument against that is right-click save. But the beauty with NFTs is you now have an individualized token that can show ownership over a particular asset. Now, of course, there are still many, many limitations with NFTs. Like counterfeit is still a very, very big thing. When you mint an NFT, you still have really no way to verify completely whether or not the original artist is the actual original minter. And so there are actually a lot of startups that are now serving to solve that issue. And there's still a lot of fraud in this space. So you do have to be careful and do your own research. I myself have also been defrauded before, but that's what kind of makes it fun. It's the wild, wild west right now. You do have to be careful, but it also creates a lot of opportunities for founders in the space to build on top of what's going on.
Yeah, thanks a lot. I think now it's time to get into little breakout rooms just for 8 minutes. I have a room called Jun, so those who want to still ask like a few dedicated questions to Jun can go there, and then we come back for a closing, and the closing statement will be for you, Jun, after 8 minutes. That's fine. You can choose basically the breakout rooms to which you go. We have one on investing, one on impact, gaming, earth, builders, one if you want to learn more about how to be with Unit, then you can join our room, and then see you guys again later. Don't forget also to think about the key takeaways from this very rich session, because you will need to memorize some of them to graduate for the Unit Masters graduation ceremony in 6 weeks. There's many surprises in life.
Okay, all right.
We think that the entire audience deserves to hear your final sharing with the community. What's most fascinating about Web3 for you? And then let's wrap up our session.
Got it. So just some closing remarks.
Yes, please.
Yeah, well, hopefully you were all able to learn something a little bit about what's been going on in Southeast Asia right now. Hopefully I piqued your interest. Generally speaking, we've been focusing on Web3. I guess back then it was just generally called crypto or blockchain since 2018. And at that time, actually, it was very, very quiet. That was very, very shortly after the 2017 crash. I would say, when it comes to the space, just follow your curiosity. And there's many, many different things for different people in this space. So DeFi, again, is very, very different from NFTs. Follow your passion and let that be your North Star, because it's very easy to get overloaded in this space. There's information overload, and crypto never sleeps. So also pace yourself. But if any of you end up becoming a founder yourselves and are interested in joining a thriving founder community to exchange ideas, to get some mentorship and also support and resources, you guys are also welcome to check out Appworks. Our accelerator, again, is recruiting founders every 6 months, and it's completely free. So something that you guys consider. We will be recruiting for our 25th batch, probably starting sometime in, I would say, April or May. So you guys can keep posting on then. If you want to stay in touch with me, you can feel free to add me on Telegram or email me, or LinkedIn also works as well.
Thank you so much, Jun, for being with us. And for the rest of you guys, tomorrow we have the live coaching session where we speak about the assignments. So your assignment for this week is to create your own stakeholder ecosystem map. You've seen some examples in Jun's talk today, and you have the instructions in the online portal. And on Thursday, we hear Zara Zamani, who is a wonderful female builder in the blockchain space. And she's going to speak from a builder's perspective about our ecosystem. Thanks all for attending today, and wish you a beautiful Tuesday. And thank you, Jun. Hope to see you in person again soon. Bye, guys.
Thanks, everyone. Have a great one. Take care. Bye-bye.